once came into her therapist's office, and she sat down, and she said to the therapist, "My problem is so serious that it would take a miracle to solve it." So the therapist was a smart guy, and he said to her, "Okay, let's suppose a miracle happened. What would life look like if the problem would disappear?" And immediately, the client began to describe what she wanted out of the relationship or whatever was going on in the problem she brought to the therapist's office. And she started building things that this one would behave like this and that it would behave like that and I would respond like that. And by the end of the session, she had a smile on her face. A lot of her problems, she saw the light at the end of the tunnel. Rabotai, Rabbi, ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem. We have a problem. Klal Yisrael has a problem. And it's a problem that we have not solved yet. And it's interesting because we, Klal Yisrael of the 20th and 21st century, look what's going on here. This, I just heard it's being streamed live on Facebook and Hidabroot and all over the world. Who knows, there's somebody in some island in the Pacific able to see me right now. We have solutions to our problems. We solve problems. 45 years ago, when first responders, the first responders were not responding so well to emergencies, there was a gentleman who started Hatzalah. If you go, never, if a person, I had to be there once for a Shabbos to be with a relative at a hospital, you can't go hungry today. With the Bikur Cholim room, Satmar, Square, you can eat and sleep and have coffee, and it's unbelievable. We have solutions to problems. And other organizations, so we can't solve this problem? And this problem I'm talking about is, of course, the reason why we're all gathered here today. And that is Sinat Chinam. We all know I'm the 10th speaker today. I'm sure the 10th speaker who's made reference to Sinat Chinam. But please, we can't figure this out. Rabbi Sai, it's us. We solve problems. So let's try to use this technique. I want to share with you in the limited time. I was told I have just like 20 minutes less now. But just the little time, I just want to share with you 3 techniques. And together, perhaps, we can figure out some solutions to our problems, to this problem. So let's think about it. Suppose you go home, we all go home tonight, go to sleep, and overnight a miracle happened and Sinat Chinam did not exist anymore. Nobody would be acting to their fellow Jew in any adverse way. Can you imagine that happened? So you wake up in the morning, you did not know that the miracle occurred. So when you go through your day, what will you notice? What are you going to notice about the people around you? What are you going to be able to notice about your fellow Jews doing differently towards you? And what will they notice about you acting differently towards them? Remember, Sinas Chinam is a thing of a past. So we're now into this era of Ahavat Chinam. What would it look like? So we have a clue. Rabbi Elimelech Milezhinsk composed the prayer many years ago and gives us a clue. Avram Fried sings it beautifully. I'm sure you've heard, many of you have heard it. He says, Adarabba tein b'libeinu. He gives us this picture of what the era of Ahavat Chinam could look like. He says, Hashem, put it in our heart, Shenira kol echad malos chavereinu. I only can do that accent so much. I'm really Ashkenazi, so you'll excuse me. Let everyone find, he says really 3 ideas. Let everybody see each other's good attributes. Let everybody talk in a proper way to their fellow Jew. And finally, there shouldn't be any sinah. We shouldn't feel any hatred. That's what it would look like in the era of Ahavat Chinam. So that's what it would look like. But let me ask you a question. Where are we holding right now today? Right? It's 10 to 6 on Tisha B'Av 2017. Where are we holding right now? if from a scale of 1 to 10, in your mind, grade us, grade Klal Yisrael. We're putting a test to Klal Yisrael right now. If 1 is when the Sinat Chinam was very intense, few days before the Churban, few days before the Beis HaMikdash, right? That's 1. And 10 would be the situation we would be in a minute before Mashiach comes. We'd be all together, unified, loving each other. Where are we holding today? What do you say? 5, 6, 9. Say, I pegged it at 7. Hopefully there are communities that are up to 9.5. 2. It's true. There are many different things. Let's peg it at a 6 just to be somewhere in the middle of all the answers given. So what would it take us to go from 6 to 7 right now? What could we do to push it from 6 to 7, or whatever number you're thinking about, to the next digit up? What could we do? So using Rebbe Elimelech's 3 ideas, I want to humbly suggest 3 things. The first thing we can do, and I'll tell you a story. I was once with a friend of mine. I went collecting for my yeshiva way out of town. And we walk into this gentleman's house. He's sitting there in a t-shirt and shorts. And we walk in with our hats, we're both yeshiva boys. And he gets up and he hugs us both. I said, that's a beautiful shalom aleichem. Wow. He sits down and tells us the following story. He was a conservative Jew. And he lived in Washington, D.C. He was a television anchorman for a news station in Washington, D.C. He was very depressed, and he called his rabbi, his conservative rabbi, up in Wellwood, New Jersey. And he told him, Rabbi, I'm coming up for the weekend. You need to cheer me up. I'm at the end. So he came up to his house. Friday afternoon, the rabbi says, you know what? Maybe don't come to our synagogue. We have 12 people show up on Friday night. Very boring, very quiet, very depressing. But you know what? A yeshiva, young guys, 40 young guys, just opened up last year across the street. Go there for Kabbalat Shabbat. And when I verified the story with the Rosh Yeshiva of now the Riverdale tells the yeshiva, he told me we were mamish there for I think a year or 2 years in Wellwood, New Jersey to pick up this neshama. So we'll call him Adam. Adam goes over to the yeshiva and he walks in. The boys had already davened mincha. So they were all sitting and learning. When he walked through the door of the Beis Medrash, each boy got up, made a line to give Adam a shalom aleichem. This is what every single person can do. Look, you're in shul for the men or women, you notice a new person in town or a new person in shul, go over, push yourself, go over and say shalom aleichem. I'll tell you a story that happened to me this winter just from a shalom aleichem. I was online at JFK Airport waiting to go to Eretz Yisrael. The TSA line was 20 minutes, almost as long as it took me to get here from Baltimore. And I hopped the schmooze with somebody, a Jew, not affiliated whatsoever. But we're schmoozing and we're talking. I said hello. At the end of the conversation, it turned out that this Jew was a professor at Yale, and I was able to get an internship for somebody I know at Yale in some science laboratory. It's unbelievable. You never know what can happen. But stop. To say shalom aleichem, say hello. You be the person. Let us be the people. Let us be the ones to make that first step and say shalom aleichem. There's a pasuk in Mishlei. Shlomo HaMelech says, Al timne tov mi ba'alov b'hiyos la'el yod chalasos. Don't hold back something good when you have the ability to do it. Every person, the Sfas Emes said, I can live 2 weeks from a compliment. We all love compliments. It's oxygen. And so too, we can give compliments to somebody else. Shlomo HaMelech says, don't hold back. If somebody deserves it, somebody led the kahal as the chazan, a woman gave a good performance And in production, I teach high school girls, so that's my frame of reference. Go over. Give them a compliment. You read a nice article in one of the magazines? Write a letter, write an email to the author and thank them. Compliment them with mamish. You will make a person's week, 2 weeks, month, they'll remember. I want to tell you a story. I wasn't planning on telling this story, but I wanted to just get it in. I was a head counselor one year, many years ago, in an out-of-town camp. And the last night of camp, the director handed me 23 envelopes. And inside the envelopes were the checks for the counselors. And he says, you give them out tomorrow before the camp leaves. So I was sitting there alone in the office. Everyone was packing up, cleaning up from camp. And I decided I'm going to write a small note to every counselor. And I did. And I handed them the check with the note inside the next day. 2 years later, I was at a chasana. And I met one of the counselors from that year, and we started schmoozing, and we started reminiscing about the summer. In middle of the conversation, this counselor takes out his wallet, takes out a piece of paper that's been crumbled and folded 6,000 times, and he says, you see, I still have your note. And what did I write on the note? I found something good to write about everybody. Compliments. I was once stuck in a car dealership in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Anybody ever been there? No, okay. Didn't think so. So I was stuck there for 2 hours. My car, Baruch Hashem, was Erev Shabbos. They fixed my car. But while I was sitting there, I was sitting in the waiting area. Another gentleman comes and sits down next to me. And we start schmoozing, not Jewish, of course. And he says to me, he turns out he's a therapist, family therapist. So I'm thinking, wow, I have 2 hours, free therapy. So we start talking about issues I have on my mind. And he told me a line, ladies and gentlemen, I traveled here from Baltimore today, and I was stuck in traffic, but if it's kedai for this one line, because it changed my life, and hopefully it will change your lives, because if you remember this line, everything becomes a lot easier. He says, and I'll repeat it twice, because the only perfect people in the world are those you don't know very well yet. Let me say it again. The only perfect people in the world are those you don't know very well yet. Because if you spend a little time, we realize that people have issues, people are struggling through life, and if they don't respond to you in a nice way, they don't return your good morning, they're gruff, they have things going on in their life. And this is the line to remember on my third suggestion to move that meter a little closer to 10, from a scale of 1 to 10, is we have to dan l'kaf zchut. The Sfas Emes says on the Mishnah, Havidan es kol ha'adam l'kaf zchus. Why does it say kol ha'adam? Because when you take into account everybody, the whole person, what they're going through, their background, their tzarot, when you take that, then you can be dan l'kaf zchut. Our problem is sinat chinam. But was there ever a time when we did not have this problem? Yes, many times. At Har Sinai, v'yichan ha'am neged ha'ar, we all stood together. During the days, surprisingly, of the evil king Achav, there was shalom. He never lost a soldier in his war. During the Holocaust, Rav Lau, the chief rabbi, says many times that never in the Holocaust there was so much love and unity. It had to take that. Prior to the 6-Day War, apparently I wasn't around, but I heard Rabbi Wein's history tapes where he says the entire Jewish nation was ba'achdus. And there was a time 3 years ago where the entire Jewish people were united davening for our 3 boys, Gilad, Eyal, and Naphtali, Hashem Yimkam Damam. I want to tell you a story that happened just around that time. There was a shul here in this area in Brooklyn, in Lawrence, which sent a messenger, their assistant rabbi, to Eretz Yisrael to be Menachem Avel, those 3 families. And this is a great story to emphasize that we have it in us. We have it in us to practice ahavat chinam, ahavas chinam. And it's very important to know these things, because if we know it, we have a frame of reference and we can expand on it. And if it works, let's do more of it. Let me just tell you the story, and I'm going to read it right off this paper because he wrote it so beautifully. He flew to Eretz Yisrael, he's on El Al. In the middle of the flight, the stewardess began to speak to me. She then inquired when I was planning to return back to the United States. I said I would be staying only until after Shabbos, and only an El Al stewardess can do this. She turns to me and she says, "What? Just 4 days? What kind of trip is that?" And I proceeded to tell her that I was sent by my shul to visit these 3 prospective families, to deliver letters that they wrote, and to show them the love that their brothers and sisters in America know for them. The stewardess began to immediately cry uncontrollably and said, "The kehillah of yours is something special, and only on El Al." Listen to this. The stewardess picks up the microphone and says, "Rabotai, we have on our plane a shliach mitzvah. Come meet a rabbi who was sent by his kehillah to perform the great mitzvah of Nichum Avelim." What followed was pure pandemonium. Everybody came up and walked up and said hello to the rabbi. And after, he says, after I finally got to sit down, the young man next to me informs me that he's 26 years old, from Seattle, Washington. He works in a national zoo, and he's going to Israel for the first time. He then proceeds to tell me that he was so inspired by our kehillah and that he'd like to borrow my talit so he can do a mitzvah that he's only did since his bar mitzvah, which was celebrated when he was 16. So I gladly gave him my talit, and then I proceeded to ask him if he knows how to recite a bracha. And he then asked me to borrow my tefillin as well, which was followed by a long conversation with other members on the plane. But that wasn't it. After a few minutes, he turns to me and he says, "Rabbi, in Seattle, Washington, we don't have these boxes, and I want to do something for the schut of these 3 neshamot. So tell me, what can I do?" I was in complete shock and overwhelmed with emotion. Here you have a rabbi, regular yeshiva, a younger man, a rabbi. You have the Seattle, Washington guy who is actually tattooed and pierced, wanting to put on tefillin. And here comes the third character. A Satmar Chassid in the next row turned to this tattooed and pierced young man and says, "Sweet Jew, if you promise me you will try to wear these tefillin every day, I will send you a pair of tefillin via FedEx to arrive at your door in Seattle by the time you get back from Israel." Now I ask you, he concludes, is Klal Yisrael anything short of amazing and absolutely incredible? We have it in us. It's in us. We can do it. We just have to push. I just want to conclude with a last point, that what will, in all these things, all these ideas, compliments, dan lekav schus, saying shalom aleichem, what is it going to take? It's going to take courage to be bold. And I want to conclude with this fantastic story. There was a Rabbi Cohen who went to lecture at a girls' high school in Eretz Yisrael, and it was before Purim. And he told the girls, in the middle of his speech, he says, "I don't know if you have this situation in your family, but if you have a situation where perhaps your parents are not speaking to some of their siblings, they're not speaking to a child, they're not speaking for many years for whatever reason, I am telling you to do the following thing. Purim morning, when your family is preparing shalach manos, I want you to quietly take one of the shalach manos off the table, write a note to the other family, bring it over to this family that you're not talking to, and say, 'Happy Purim,' and leave." One girl in this crowd had that situation. Her mother and her aunt, the mother's sister, were not speaking to each other for the last 15 years. She followed Rabbi Cohen's instruction. Rabbi Cohen said, "Don't worry about Gezel. It's on me. I'm telling you it's mutter." So she took, Purim morning, she took a shalach manos. She wrote a note to her aunt and uncle, mishpachat whatever. She snuck out of the house. She walked a few blocks to her aunt. She knocked on the door. Her aunt opens the door. She almost had a heart attack. sees her niece that we're not talking to this part of the family. The niece followed instructions, handed the shalach manas to her aunt, and left. The aunt closed the door, brought the shalach manas into the kitchen, sat down, and started sobbing. Her husband came in and said, "What's up?" She showed him beautiful shalach manas, and finally the ice was breaking. It penetrated deep into their feelings. And they said, "You know what? Life is short. We got to get on. What are we doing? We're not going to be here forever." They took the most expensive wine and a box of chocolates, and they sent back a bigger shalach manas back to her sister. That arrived by the first mother, but she never realized what her daughter had done. So when they got this shalach manas, they sat down, and she sat down with her husband and said, "You're right, this enough is enough." And they sent back even a bigger shalach manas, and it went back again. And the whole day, shalach manas were going back and forth until 5 o'clock. Both families, after 15 years, sat down to the Purim Suda for the first time. My message to you is, don't wait for a tragedy. All of us know who we have to make peace with, whether it's a relative, cousin, aunt, child, our spouse, whatever it is. Let's make the first move, and let's start moving that meter closer to number 10 on the scale of 1 to 10. Mitzvah Hashem, we should get there b'karov.